You've probably seen tons of mock draft content on offense, on IDP, but rarely do you ever see much content covering both sides of the ball. Well, the other day, a couple of friends of mine, Richard and Johnny, and I hopped in the studio. We covered rounds 1 to 10 of an offense plus IDP redraft mock. Today, we're getting into the depths of the IDP rounds. We're going to cover rounds 10 through 20 today. So stay tuned because in just a second, we're going to jump right into the deep end. Welcome back to the continuance of this mock draft, a little short series here we've got going. If you were tuned in the other day, then you know that I was joined by a couple of co-hosts here, and Richard Latham, our data guy behind the scenes, keeping everything running on the idpplus.com website. How you doing today?
Good. How's it going? Ready for the next 10? Excited.
That's right. That's right. We're early this morning, Sunday at 7 a.m. Central Time. Johnny is also joining us. You guys have probably seen him on screen as well. He's commonly up there each and every week. Johnny, how are you doing today?
I'm great, man. That first 10 rounds was nice, talking about some offense, some top IDP players. Looking forward to getting in the nitty gritty here, talking about IDP world. So excited for today.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we're going to jump into it real quick. Got the shared screen here, and we will kind of recap, I guess, the first handful of rounds. Just real quickly here, where we've got, well, hell, if I'm going to go 10 rounds, that's going to take a minute. So we'll just kind of recap each of our teams here, where in the first 10 rounds, Johnny has, again, I'll remind everybody of kind of the format here. It's a redraft mock, 10 team, one quarterback, full PPR, IDP, tackle heavy is kind of the IDP scoring that we kind of centered this around. And we grabbed guys from some leagues that we're in, some guys also, some other guys that are in the industry as well to kind of fill this out and give you guys a true mock draft here. So Johnny's team is looking like this through 10 rounds. In round 1, he's got Jahmyr Gibbs, Marvin Harrison in round 2, Josh Jacobs, Ken Walker, and then he goes on a 5 wide receiver run here with Tyreek Hill, George Pickens in the 6th round, Cortland Sutton in the 7th, Xavier Worthy, Ricky Pearsall, Brian Robinson to round out the top 10 rounds. Then we go over to Rich's team here. He drafted at the 10 spot. He's coming in with Ashton Genty as his first pick, Malik Neighbors in round 2, Bucky Irving, Drake London, Terry McLaurin, Baker Mayfield, Aaron Jones, Max Crosby, let's see here, Travis Kelce, and Zach Bond to round out his top 10. Then myself, taking a couple of shots that we were kind of talking about last week, and now I'm kind of regretting after some recent news that we've seen on one of my guys here, but that's okay. We'll kind of hang with it. And I've got through rounds 1 through 10, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Christian McCaffrey, Travis Hunter in round 3, Chase Brown in round 4, George Kittle, Joe Mixon is the one I'm kind of regretting now that we've got kind of injury that he's going to be missing some time. Had I known that, I probably would have backed him up with some Nick Chubb later on or just pivoted altogether. But either way, I think Joe May, I don't think he's going to be out for the season. So, I'm still here for that. We'll kind of bear it out. Then we got Jaylen Waddle in round 7, Calvin Ridley in round 8, Patrick Mahomes in round 9. And to round out my 10th round, I've got Fred Warner. I went ahead and grabbed my first IDP there to round it out. Okay. So now you guys kind of have a lay of the land in terms of our teams. If you want kind of some background on our picks and mindsets, go back to the last episode. We went on for over a good hour there, kind of explaining our picks. So that was a good time. So without wasting too much time here, we're going to get right into it, and we're going to change up the cadence a little bit and go a couple rounds at a time. Keep it a little more short and sweet so we can add a little bit more value in the in-between rounds and the kind of picks in between us. So we'll start off here with round 11, and we'll read off the first couple of rounds, and then I'll have one of the guys kind of give their mindsets, and we'll just kind of rotate here and add some context as we can. So to start out round 11, Andrew Van Ginkel goes at 11-1. Dalton Kincaid goes to Johnny at 11-2. Danielle Hunter for the third pick. Trey Hendrickson, Caleb Williams, Bobby Okereke, Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden, Michael Pittman, Isaiah Pacheco to round out round 11 on Rich's team there at the 11-10. Then we go into round 12. TJ Edwards is Rich's first pick of the next round. I went ahead and took Najee Harris. Then goes Brian Branch, Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Drake May, Buda Baker, Khalil Shakir. Jordan Brooks goes to Johnny. And then Jonathan Grenard rounds out round 12. So we're getting into the depths of the IDP stuff here. So let's jump right into it here. And to start off round 11, Johnny, let's go ahead and cover your couple of picks. Kind of talk about your mindset here with Dalton Kincaid, waiting on your tight end here, your choice in him, and then also turn around and picking up Jordan Brooks as your top end linebacker. I can't say that I would necessarily be on the same trading with Kincaid, but he's definitely put up top end numbers. So I could see the allure there, and obviously, honestly, he's probably one of the better pass catchers, if not the best pass catcher on the team. So the opportunity is there. And then also on that kickback round, I really love that Jordan Brooks pick. In all honesty, I see him as a linebacker one pretty easily. So I wouldn't mind having him as my LB1, and I think you got some great value considering the first linebacker was taken 6 rounds ago. So kind of elaborate on that for us there, Johnny.
Yeah, man, that was by design. That's what I was hoping for with a defensive play with my 12th pick. And Jordan Brooks, to me, he's still a top 5, top 6 linebacker in redraft this year. So I thought it was great value. The Dalton Kincaid pick, looking back, this is how it goes sometime in fantasy. I think that, I know my mindset was get a bottom barrel tight end who I still think has some upside. For Dalton Kincaid, I'm simply looking for him to do production-wise between 2023 and 2024. I don't think he was healthy last year. Don't think he got a fair shake. So he left us with a bad taste in our mouths, but I'm willing to go back to the well here with Dalton Kincaid and hope for some positive regression. Now, looking at the way the draft did shake out, this is going to happen for everybody. You find some picks that you said, you know what, based on where they got this next player, it would have been a better pick, and that guy was Tucker Kraft. 14-6 was when Gump picked Tucker Kraft. And I thought, honestly, that was a guy that I was hoping to get as my second tight end a little bit later, 2 or 3 rounds later. But he got sniped right before I could pick. I ended up with Antoine Winfield in that round. So, that's a fine problem to have. But, hats off to Gump there with the Tucker Kraft pick. We've got some good news on him. I think he's a great pick, especially in the 14th round. But, yeah, Dalton Kincaid, I was just trying to shore up my tight ends there. And that was my 11th round was the last pick that I just picked offense. 12th, I moved into offense with Jordan Brooks. And again, man, I just think we're tackle heavy scoring. We know that they have some help there too. What's his name? Tyrell Dodson is also on the team. Maybe a good LB3 with upside. But Jordan Brooks, we know who he is. He has some elite tackle ability and maybe some sack ability there too. So I'm agreeing with you, actually. Great late round value here with Jordan Brooks.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, he's a guy who's kind of set a floor of almost 140, 150 tackles plus for himself. Even as linebacker 2 in Seattle next to Bobby Wagner, the guy had 180 plus tackles. So what else could you ask for? That's probably the best linebacker 2 that I've seen since I played in IDP. Very rarely are we seeing that second guy put up 150 plus tackles. That's insane. So the fact that he's able to carry that through now to historically really unproductive linebacker room in Miami, he's carried that production and ran with it. And I like that shout out for Tyrell Dodson too. I've advocated for him recently on Twitter as kind of a late round kind of value because Tyrell Dodson's honestly the guy that's calling the plays on Miami. He came in late in the season, only played 2 games, and they put the sticker on his helmet. So what does that say about Tyrell Dodson? And the fact that he was averaging about 9 tackles a game when he was playing full snaps just kind of leads us to believe that he's going to be on the field often. So I like that call out. All right, here. So let's back out. We'll unhighlight Johnny's team, and we'll move over. Rich, why don't you add a little context here to your pick of Isaiah Pacheco to round out round 11, and then TJ Edwards there at pick 12 for the first pick of the 12th round. I like Pacheco this season. I feel like last year he wasn't quite himself after coming back from the injury. And I feel like maybe an off season would give him some time to kind of get healthy and maybe get things back to where they were previously. But nonetheless, I'm still hesitant, even as a Chiefs fan. Kind of makes me nervous that maybe he falls back to that 7th round kind of play and just kind of gets seeded. But at the same time, the opportunity's there. So I think Pacheco definitely sees an improvement upon last year, just kind of to what extent. So that's the way I see it anyways, but I do like Pacheco. I think he's a hard runner, and I think he's gonna see plenty of volume. So I think the floor is definitely there, especially in the 11th round. Then TJ Edwards, obviously being an LB1, that's an incredible value as well. I think being able to get him in the 12th round is incredible value there as your top linebacker. So why don't you elaborate there on those two picks?
Sure. Yeah. I thought you were a 49ers fan, given all the 49ers you drafted there. Um, but let's see. With Pacheco, yeah, I think there's obviously a little risk here. He didn't look himself at the end of last year, coming back from an injury, but that's kind of normal coming back from a big injury like that, having
Yeah.
a number of rough games. They say he's fully healthy again, and I'm drafting here my backup running back for upside, and there's not many running backs after him. So this, in my mind, this was like the last of a certain tier.
Sure.
Again, hating on Axe's pick, but not Najee Harris. Like I'm a little concerned there with Hampton and what'll go on with that offense and how much of a mix there'll be. To me, there's no like clear second for Pacheco, and with
Mhm.
that, he has that RB1 value still. Um, and then TJ Edwards, I think he's the next best linebacker available. Often probably ranked in the top 3 or 4, 3 to 5 linebackers. Very consistent tackler. If we're talking 130, 150 tackles, I think he had a little regression last year, but he has that sack upside, which you don't often see um, this high, this high in the linebacker ranking. So there's a little bit of fun there. And similar to what you're saying about Dodson, like I think Tremaine Edmonds on this offense is very much the same. Like it is odd that Chicago is one of those teams that can support two high tackle linebackers and do a pretty good job with it.
Yeah, in total agreement here. And as you guys can see, TJ Edwards is just putting up incredible numbers here year over year. For the last 4 years, he's had no less than 125 tackles. So to get him as your linebacker one and projecting no change really to this defense or the roles for the guys on it as well. I really like that pick in TJ Edwards. I actually just covered the Bears in my team fantasy focused team preview series, and I went in to kind of talk about how the offense ought to be kind of more stable. There should be just kind of more consistency in terms of overall snaps for this defense moving forward. Now he's got help in the front seven as well, where they added on the defensive line. So I think it's just going to give him a little bit more clear path. He's not going to be able to. He's not going to need to scramble as much to kind of make things happen. It should just kind of come to him a little bit more naturally, the way I see it. Tremaine Edmonds also a guy who's kind of had a decent floor in terms of overall IDP. Not really a flashy guy with too much upside, but you're right. He is able to maintain about 115 tackles a season. He was the guy that Johnny and I were betting unders on last year for tackles, just because he's not historic. Like I say, he's not a flashy guy, but he's got a nice floor. So yeah, I do like that call out there for the Bears being able to host two full time linebackers.
And I'm doing the opposite of Johnny here. I'm being aggressive with linebackers. I think it's always good to get these top guys early on because
Mm-hmm.
they'll go quick, and
Right.
that can be my strategy. It always depends on the draft, but that's what I do.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And the fact that you got Zach Bond 2 rounds before, and then honestly, I think TJ Edwards is probably a higher floor kind of linebacker, just considering he's got the year over year production. And Zach Bond just popped onto the screen. So the fact that you got, even in my opinion, probably a higher ranked linebacker later on is just incredible value there. So you really short up that linebacker room with TJ Edwards. So yeah, I like that there. Then, like you said, Pacheco doesn't really have any competition. Kareem Hunt is a guy that they can pretty well rely on. They did that last year. A guy who's not going to be flashy, but he's going to grind the middle of the field. So if in case of emergency, they could lean on Kareem Hunt, but I don't think he's going to be threatening any touches by any stretch of the imagination. You put these two guys out there at full capacity, I don't think Kareem Hunt's going to win out. So yeah,
Mhm.
definitely on board there with Pacheco. And I'll elaborate here on my pick here. because right before Rich, I took Michael Pittman at 11-9 and then turn around and grab Najee Harris. And, the more we're looking at this, the uglier my team is looking. I took a lot of shots with this team because I started out with kind of shooting for the moon. So, I kind of leaned right into that the rest of the draft where I took Waddle, a kind of an uncertain guy for this season, but also has a lot of opportunity. And then I turn around here and I also grabbed a guy like my Travis Hunter early on that doesn't necessarily have kind of any kind of floor. So a lot of risk, but also a lot of upside here. My mindset here behind Michael Pittman is more or less just the rumblings out of Indianapolis is that we're going to see a lot of Daniel Jones this year. We're already seeing that Anthony Richardson is kind of on and off the pup list and had some injuries already with his throwing shoulder, and we've seen this before already for the last couple of years with Anthony Richardson. It's often that the backup quarterback is going to end up getting some time. I believe that it's going to be Daniel Jones much of the season. And in that case, you get a passing quarterback on this Indianapolis Colts team. I think we've seen, who was it last year? Was it Joe Flacco? Who was it last year that came in and kind of made some of these guys relevant there for a few weeks while Anthony Richardson was out? I couldn't
I think Flacco, yeah.
Is that right? Okay, yeah. So when Flacco came in, all these guys' value really rose up. Now you get a guy like Daniel Jones, who's not a Joe Flacco, but definitely a guy who's going to air it out and actually has some decent success with it. Just albeit not overly flashy in Daniel Jones, but definitely a significant increase in the overall passing game. And I think Michael Pittman now going in the 11th round, being the number one wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts, I feel like there's a lot of potential here for him to really increase that ADP there and even jump up a number of rounds. Just with the sheer kind of volume that we're going to be looking at, a guy who's going to be getting 130 plus targets. I think he's just is, like I said, not an overly flashy guy, but I think he's probably got some of the best opportunity he's seen in the league so far. He's kind of just not really had all that great of quarterback production to this point. Not that Daniel Jones is going to save the day, but I think the arrow might be pointing a little farther up than anything he's seen with Anthony Richardson so far. So I was scooping up that value later on. Najee Harris, I personally am one that, yes, the Chargers drafted Omarion Hampton. Do I think Omarion Hampton is going to take over the backfield week one? No. I think Najee Harris is a guy who's been playing 17 games pretty much his entire career, and he's been a thorn in the side of anybody who's tried to oppose him. I can't count the number of running backs that have come into the league as Najee Harris is RB2, and all these zero RB drafters are all gushing over Jaylen Warren or whoever might be backing him up or the receiving back out there. But guess what? By the end of the season, Najee Harris is always the one that ends up with the most points, the most volume, the most important touches around the goal line. And although it's not the prettiest, he is the guy who is there getting all of the touches. And unless he's getting injured, I don't see the Chargers just setting him on the bench. They signed him to this deal, anticipating just I guess a learning curve for Omarion Hampton. Not that he really needs one, but it just helps him in his development. He doesn't have to take on the full workload as he adjusts to the speed of the NFL. And to me, Najee Harris is going to be the kind of guy who's going to get 10 or more touches every game. I do see that it being a pretty significant split where it's going to be a lot of 50-50. It's probably going to be kind of annoying for both sides, but considering I'm getting Najee Harris, who could be very well the lead back on the ground in the 12th round, and I didn't have to pay up third round capital to get a lead running back on the same team where Omarion Hampton went, I think even the second round, that's just way too pricey for me. So if I can get the lead back here in the 12th round, to me, I feel like I got some good value there, especially for like a bench kind of running back. Not a guy that I'm going to be relying on, but, at least being on my bench, I can kind of see how the season goes and see whether I feel confident or not whenever it comes time to use him. But again, Najee Harris is not really a guy that's been an underperformer, not an overperformer, but he's a pretty well a steady Eddie. So that was kind of my mindset there with Najee Harris, and I probably went a lot longer than I probably should have on a couple of guys in the 11th and 12th round. You guys are here for IDP, so let's carry this on into the next couple of rounds here. Let's see. Y'all started in round 13. Harold Landry goes in the first pick of the 13th round. Then Johnny picks up Alex Singleton. Then goes Blake Cashman, Tyler Warren, Kyler Murray, Nick Bolton, Edge Cooper, and Emeka Egbuka. I took Deion Henley there at 13-9. And then Stephon Diggs to round out round 13 goes to Rich's team. Rich turns around at the turn and grabs Ernest Jones. I took Trayvon Walker next. Jamie Sherwood goes at 14-3, Bo Nix, Travis Etienne, Tucker Kraft at 14-6. Josh Hines Allen, Josh Downs, Antoine Winfield goes to Johnny, and then Bobby Wagner rounds out round 14. So, Johnny, jump into your Alex Singleton pick. I like the upside of a guy like Singleton, but I'm kind of expecting a little bit of a slow start to the season, just coming off a pretty gnarly injury. But the moves this team has made around him suggest that they feel confident in his recovery, and they didn't need to draft any significant backup to replace him or I guess, buy him time to see the field here. So jump into a little bit of that with Alex Singleton and then Antoine Winfield.
Shoot, I mean, I'm lucky this draft was a little bit early. I think I even jumped on Singleton. He wasn't even that high in the rankings. We had guys, I believe, like Henley, Cooper, Wagner, Sherwood. These guys were all projected to go before in the rankings, before Alex Singleton. And I simply was not going to take the risk and see if, I could, based on ADP, get him the next round. Alex Singleton, to me, nobody loves that you're coming off an ACL injury, but it seems like the price right now is so discounted. I think as we get closer to the season, he's going to creep back to that definitely top 10, maybe top 5, especially in my rankings. I just love the dude, Alex Singleton. This is what we're here for. We're here for the tackles, and I don't see really, unless he comes back, like you said, rusty, which is a possibility, but things are looking good right now, healthy in the preseason. So, maybe slow start, weeks 1 and 2. But other than that, to me, it's wheels up. And Alex Singleton, to be honest with you, I think there's a very undeserved or unnoticed, I should say, stat. I mean, first off, 3 games last year, averaged over 10 tackles a game, right on par with who Alex Singleton is. Tore his ACL, still played every snap in that game. So did not, miss games until the next week. So played the full snaps with a torn ACL, still had a nice game. So Alex Singleton, it's all wheels up once again for me. I think he should have honestly went higher. There's a case you could be made to say he should be drafted over Jordan Brooks. So I thought Jordan Brooks is somebody who might get picked on the turnaround. And then, so I took the higher ranked player and then came back with Singleton. Harold Landry was a good pick there before and after. I mean, Blake Cashman has got a lot of hype. I see him climbing up draft boards, rightfully so. Ended the season on a heater last year. I think averaging 8.5 tackles in the last 4 or 5 games. Some other nice names here who got picked. Big fan of Edgerrin Cooper. I think maybe he was a little underappreciated in the rankings, and as you get closer to the regular season, he's not going to be this low. So that was a good value pick by Superior Steve in there. I also like the offensive pick in Ibuka for the Buccaneers. At some point, whether it's right off the jump, right now Chris Godwin's not exactly healthy. I think he'll be a solid number 2 receiver. Then we had Henley, who I think is a good pick here, but I'm a little bit hesitant. I think his production comes down a little bit or just stays the same, which is what we're hoping. They have Junior Colson looking healthy. So Henley's somebody who I still love, but there is some writing on the wall for a little bit of regression just by natural selection if the linebacker 2 steps up there and Junior Colson. So we'll see about that. But then you got some great picks too. Ernest Jones there. Trayvon Walker, I think, is a great defensive lineman in this spot. Love Jamie Sherwood in this spot. There we go. That player I talked about already, Tucker Kraft on offense, is a great stab here. So if you build offense early, there's some guys who are falling down the board here, especially sleepers. Those later round players like Tucker Kraft. Bo Nix is a darling, so you've got Bo Nix in the 4th. Good job there. Josh Hines Allen, another good pick. To me, a little bit better at best ball. I know you think the same, Axton, but still like him. He's a little bit lower in the rankings here. Still a good player. And then finally, I capped it off with Antoine Winfield Jr. there. I think, to me, he's a top 3 safety, and I think I got him maybe as 5th or 6th safety. So I think it was great value there for me. And you can see the next couple rounds we'll get into, but I am hitting IDP hard here. But that was my goal by design. Build the offense, overstock the offense, and then you come back in rounds 12 through 14 and get guys like Jordan Brooks, Singleton, and Winfield. These are all still top players at their position. So that's kind of what I was hoping for, that I can kind of get over on the rest of the guys and still find some great value here. And once again, once you get closer to that season, the rankings will change. But I went with my gut here, and so far, every day that gets closer to the preseason, the team's looking good. So I'm happy about it here.
Yeah, and when you're talking about a guy like Alex Singleton, even if he does have a slow start, and say it's like the first quarter of the season, if you round out and you add some extra depth there at linebacker later on, you can afford to maybe anticipate that and see that coming, play some LB 2, 3 types or something if you see that Alex Singleton isn't, or like even week one, set him on the bench, just kind of test the water, see how the first week is going to go. Put in a guy like Tyrell Dodson from later on, or Aziz Al Shire or something for the first week, see how things go. And if he pops already, boom, you can put him into your lineup for the next week. If he's a slow start, you've got an excellent LB3 in there to kind of replace him for the time being. So yeah, definitely on board there. And then, of course, Antoine Winfield, you got him as what the DB4 there, a guy who can easily finish as the top DB has before. And the role's not really changing there. So definitely a fan of those picks. Then you kind of went on to talk about Edge Cooper. He was the guy that I marked down as being kind of a good value here, who's got the arrow looking up. I fully anticipate him to kind of take over Quay Walker's role. And honestly, I'm just real salty on Quay Walker's kind of attitude and play. The fact that he hasn't really seen a full season, and it's just kind of all kinds of things have kind of gone wrong for Quay Walker, and it's not necessarily because he's done everything right and just had bad luck. A lot of that is kind of attitude, where he's taken himself out of games and gotten booted. Then just kind of, from what I understand, his attitude in practice is not that great. He's kind of a baby in terms of just not really getting his way. I don't really, that just rubs me the wrong way. And the fact that Edge Cooper came in and popped right onto the scene in year one tells me this team really likes them some Edge Cooper. So I definitely love that pick. And I think he could easily overtake that top linebacker role there, as the team just kind of almost seems like they're waiting for Quay Walker to, squash his opportunity. So, and Isaiah McDuffie is more than capable of coming in as that LB2 and taking over there too. So definitely like that call out. But another one that I like there to round out round 13 was Stephon Diggs. I think he's a guy who, as the wide receiver one for the New England Patriots in an ascending offense, they've got new offensive line help. Drake May was a middling QB2 or so last year as a rookie. Now we're looking at a better offensive line, some more weapons. I think we can expect quite a big jump from the New England Patriots this year. And Stephon Diggs being a guy who's got the kind of prowess that you need for a young quarterback to kind of get used to the league and adjust to the speed, because last year he didn't have any kind of serious weapons to throw to. He was throwing to a bunch of young guys with no experience and no kind of prowess that Stephon Diggs is going to bring in here. And Stephon Diggs has been one of those guys who can finish among the top few in the league. So
Did,
I definitely like that pick to round out the round
did
there.
you click Stephon Diggs and then Jordan Addison came up? That's kind of
No, I think there's a little lag there, so I think I just clicked the wrong one there.
Oh, okay. I was just like, that's kind of ironic.
Yeah, no, but yeah, talk about your picks there with Stephon Diggs and then Ernest Jones there, your third linebacker, who very well could be a linebacker one as well.
Yeah. I'll say one quick comment on Alex Singleton. I think as the year starts, it's one of those best, like somewhat risky picks, because you would immediately know if he's a dud week one, or if he's got a dud. If he's got some time to come back week one, or if he's back week one. His
Mm-hmm.
upside is or his standard is almost always 10 tackles. So
Sure.
if you see him around that standard week one, you kind of know he's your guy. And you don't see many players with that kind of talent and that kind of consistency to be able to make that quick decision. And he's a very good person from that side, that upside of your roster. Stephon Diggs, though, yeah, I think I got him here pretty late. Pretty happy with that. He is likely the wide receiver one. I think Demario Douglas is doing pretty good in camp, so you never know. But yeah, like Drake May likes to throw it out, and I think Stephon Diggs is that kind of player. Hopefully, he's over that injury a little bit. It sounds like he is.
I've heard no limitations, so that yeah, I think so.
But this is the kind of player where as the weeks start, you can kind of gauge that as well. Like the first couple weeks, if he needs a couple weeks to ramp up, it's very common with an ACL that it takes you a couple weeks to ramp up and get back to that normal performance. Um, Especially when they're starting the season off for the first time in a whole year. But yeah, pretty happy with that pick. Very late. I mean, I probably wouldn't have gone Egbuka there. I think that stack is pretty off. That offense is pretty stacked with other wide receivers. And what Downs went after, and then Cooper Cup and Debo. Like I think I probably got the last like very solid wide receiver one on the board. Would be my personal take. And then Ernest Jones. I also think he's got a potential of being in the top five this year. After his tenure with the Rams, he had that brief tenure with the Titans. Things didn't go well for him, and then he came back to looking like a stud last year. And I feel like the Seahawks are investing in him, and he got a pretty good paycheck there. Was it the offseason? So that's my third linebacker. I have a pretty good linebacker stack. I'm pretty happy at this point. But I think some bad news is coming up, and I'll share that the next round.
All right. Yeah, like I say, I'm a big fan of that Ernest Jones pick. It's good value. He's often going pretty early for me to be drafting him, because he's often in ADP just one of those top handful of linebackers. I'm not really a fan of taking him there, but where you got him, I feel like you got some good value there for a guy who can put up 130 plus tackles. So I like that floor play there for your LB3. And I'll jump into a little bit of my mindset here, going with Deion Henley in round 13 and Trayvon Walker to round it out. Deion Henley was a guy I scouted, or not scouted. I watched some tape on him when he first came out, and I liked it. I liked what he had brought to the table. Unfortunately, he didn't pan out in year one, but he did get opportunity and jumped right on it and superseded the head coach's guy who he brought in straight from Michigan State in Junior Colson. We all kind of thought Junior Colson was going to be the guy who was going to come in and take over this defense. He kind of had coach's pet of sorts, he kind of brought his guy in. So we all kind of thought that was going to happen last year. Well, Deion Henley came over and took over the scene with 142 combined tackles and just completely blew up in his first year with that opportunity. So I have a hard time believing that the coaching staff is just going to throw Junior Colson out there after Deion Henley put up the season that he did. So the opportunity, I think, is plenty here. And the fact that I'm getting Deion Henley as a middling linebacker 2 here, I think the upside could be a linebacker 1, a top 12 linebacker. We just kind of like to see maybe those splits go a little bit more in his favor. I think he was more of an evenly split guy in terms of solo to assisted tackle ratio, where he was getting he had a lot of help in a lot of his tackles, but I think with another year in this having the same kind of opportunity, I think maybe we see that kind of go favor a little bit more towards the solo tackle aspect. Just the fact that he was in on so many plays and being able to, even if it was assisted tackles, to me, just being able to rack up that kind of volume that he was able to do and take over that opportunity. I like the head coach. Definitely a solid coaching staff who's going to, allow for a little bit more consistency from guys on this team. So definitely like some upside in Dan Henley, a guy that I've kind of kept my eye on now that he's popped. I'm excited to be able to kind of grab him here as a low end LB2. Then talk a little bit about Trayvon Walker, former first overall pick, who kind of had a slow start to his career, but in the last couple of seasons, we've actually seen him rack up 2 consecutive double-digit sack seasons. So considering the kind of upward trend of a guy like Trayvon Walker in the last couple of seasons, and then also the outlook of this team, where we're looking at a Jaguars team who's definitely going to be more competitive than years past, where Trevor Lawrence is coming back with hopefully a fully healthy season. Liam Cohen comes in as offensive coordinator to give this offense a little bit more firepower. They bring in Travis Hunter. They revamp the offensive line. So I think the offense is going to keep this team in games more often, and this team is just going to be a lot more competitive as a result. And then last year, if you think when Doug Peterson was kind of going out, this defense just kind of quit overall. I mean, the players just didn't want to play for their coaching staff. You could kind of tell overall people were taking plays off and games off. It just was not pretty last year. But with the new coaching staff, kind of new life under this whole team, I think the arrow is pointing up, and I think that there's some good pieces here on this Jaguar team, and I want to get in on that. And I think Trayvon Walker is still upward ascending entering his 3rd year. I think we could see maybe him tap more into that 101 overall kind of potential with the kind of upward trend that we're looking at for this Jaguars team. So I think we could be looking. He's already got that 50 to 60 tackle floor we like to see out of a defensive lineman. That's outstanding. So the fact that he's able to now give us 2 seasons of double-digit sack potential, I think as a first overall pick, the ceiling could even go greater here. So I'm just excited about a Trayvon Walker season this year. So I had to get in and jump on some Trayvon here for my defensive lineman. So thoughts on that before we move into the next couple of rounds, fellas?
Yeah, I'll say something. I'll hop in. Man, I back up the Trayvon Walker logic, and at this time last year, I was recommending to go out and get the defensive lineman within the top 5 to 7 picks, stack on those guys like Hutchinson, T.J. Watt. But at the same time, I mean, the way that ADP, the way that these mock drafts have shaken out, my mantra this year is hit the linebackers hard. You can only get so many LB1s. I mean, if you have, say Zaire Franklin, Logan Wilson, and Ernest Jones, and then your defensive line is someone like Trayvon Walker, Alex Highsmith, Derek Brown. I think that's a great start to your season. I don't think you need to overkill this year with defensive line. Seems like there's some great sleepers going late. So if you do go that heavy defensive line in the first, say, 2 out of 3 picks are on the DL, then you're going to be lacking, no doubt about it. You met your third linebacker, which you're starting. Might be Ivan Pace, might be Patrick Queen, optimistically with these guys. So when we talk about the linebackers we have, we look at Richard, Zach Bond, TJ Edwards, Ernest Jones. Those are all LB1s. So I think that's a great, avenue to go. And then there were some guys, defensive line we'll get into later, that haven't even been drafted in this 23-round draft. So great year for linebackers. I'm saying, fade the defensive lineman a little bit more than usual. And then, Axton, I wanted to mention one unnoticed stat for Henley. He was great last year, and I do think that the drop this year maybe is, he was a 1-year wonder. This is technically his third year now, but maybe kind of like that sophomore slump. People may be thinking maybe Junior Colson gets healthy. He had that appendectomy, so that really set him back last year. I do think Colson is healthy, and he's the guy that's playing the second linebacker spot. They've mixed and matched guys, Troy Dye, a couple other guys at the inside linebacker spot. So maybe Colson can ascend a little bit, but can't take away from the fact Diane Henley. I think it was the NFL best. I believe it was either 6 or 8 games in a row, middle of the season. Diane Henley 10 or more tackles. So extremely impressive on that. Goes a little bit unnoticed, and hey, there's a chance that Junior Colson could play a complementary role, could not get healthy. And then Henley is an absolute value at this pick. So somebody who is a little bit of a wild card, but is still young and still racking up tackles at an elite rate. So don't let that 0 tackle game in Week 17 versus the Patriots rub you the wrong way going into drafts.
Yeah, I mean, had he played, he could have had over 150 tackles. So, I appreciate that. But yeah, you're right. In terms of the defensive line, that's kind of the approach I've been taking as well, where, once the top tier edge rushers go off, there's kind of a little bit of a gap there, but there's a huge group of DL2, 3 types that just have all the opportunity in the world to kind of increase that ADP. All kinds of guys like Jonathan Cooper's, your Montez Sweat's a good value this year, way later in drafts. Greg Rousseau. I mean, we'll talk about a handful of other guys. A lot of defensive tackles this year, too. Could be star-worthy in just overall defensive lineman league. So let's actually jump right into the next couple of rounds here. Keep this thing moving. We'll start off with round 15. Robert Spillane goes 15-1. Logan Wilson goes to Johnny at 15-2. Trey Benson, Devon Witherspoon, Nick Cross, Jaylen Warren, Derwin James at 15-7. Jaden Blue, Terrell Bernard. I grabbed Terrell Bernard. Then Greg Rousseau. Rich grabs the second Buffalo Bill in a row there to round out round 15. And he turns back and grabs Jack Campbell. I took Levante David at 16-2. Then goes Dallas Goedert, Quincy Williams, Deebo Samuel, Jesse Bates, Grant Delpit, Cooper Kupp. Azeez Al-Shaair goes to Johnny at 16-9. And then Joshua Metellus rounds out round 16 at 16-10. So, Johnny, I like that Logan Wilson pick. He's actually a guy who I'm actually finding myself drafting a lot of this year. He's historically been an overvalued linebacker, in my opinion. But last year he was well on pace for over 160 tackles before he went down. He's a guy who's finally fallen down into like the back end LB2, LB3 range even. So to be able to get a guy who has who at least was on pace for a majority of the season to get 160 plus tackles here in the 15th round, I think is an incredible value. I really like some Logan Wilson this year. And I was actually even looking into the injury. If it's injury that's actually causing this ADP drop, that's incredible because the only thing he had done was a cleanup procedure on his knee. The Bengals knew by the middle of the season they weren't really, they kind of had a long shot for the playoffs. And I think this kind of seemed like a situation where Logan Wilson just had a nagging knee injury that wasn't necessarily going to keep him off the field, but it wasn't going to allow him to play at his full potential. So he just went ahead and got it cleaned up. Took the L on the season. It wasn't really going to hurt the defense a lot more than what it was already hurting. But it was not an ACL, not a MCL, not a meniscus, no major ligament tears or anything like that. Just a cleanup procedure. So to me, it's like wherever that trajectory was going, let's just there's no reason why it can't just pick right up. And this defense hasn't improved. So I think Logan Wilson is going to fall right into a ton of production. So why don't you elaborate on a little bit about that?
Logan Wilson, man, I believe he played, I want to say 10 or 11. I believe it's 11 games last year. And none of those games did he have less than 8 tackles. So I don't think you can find a player out there that, 100% of the games had 8 or more tackles. Granted, it wasn't a full season, but absolutely that trajectory he was on. Maybe he was even hampered by the injury in season. So goes to show you how much of a baller he was in the tackle department, even with maybe being injured too. And the second thing I want to say about Logan Wilson is, they released Jermaine Pratt. They let go Akeem Davis-Gaither. Had Logan Wilson had problems and they thought, hey, we're not going to, have our best linebacker healthy, I don't think those guys would have been released. Granted, they do bring in rookie Demetrius Knight. I'm high on him. I have him later in the draft here, but I do think he's going to be a starting linebacker. Do think he brings, kind of like an Edgerrin Cooper profile, but Logan Wilson is there. Logan Wilson we value a little bit higher than Quay Walker. I'm excited for Demetrius Knight, but I would have been more excited with the tackle floor that Jermaine Pratt would have given us. So I think actually, if you're looking at the linebacker pairing, Logan Wilson's in a better spot with Demetrius Knight. I think that, the fact that he won every game with 8 or more tackles, let's keep that. Let's run that back in 2025. And I think it's a great value here. I've seen him in the linebacker 20s. To me, I can't keep him out of my top 15. So Logan Wilson, just a model of consistency there. Absolutely was going to be my pick. Then you're looking at some offensive guys, some defensive backs here. Fine picks. But one I really like, actually two, are by you guys, Terrell Bernard and then Jack Campbell. I mean, Terrell Bernard, last year we kind of seen him have a little bit of a sophomore slump, got injured. The tackle consistency wasn't exactly there. He did have some 8-10 tackle games, but did have some clunkers as well. So we'll see who the real TB is. I still like him a lot, still a young player. And then Jack Campbell, writing was on the wall that after Anzalone got hurt last year, Jack Campbell moved into that 100%, snap share player role that we thought was going to come into the season. He rubbed us, a lot of us, the wrong way from week 1 until he became, 100% player. I think it was like week 10, week 11 when Anzalone got hurt. And, that's kind of cements his status there. They're looking at other linebackers. I hear they're looking at Kyzir White. I'm wondering, what are they going to do with Kyzir White? I know he's not going to play over Jack Campbell. Maybe he eats into some snaps for Alex Anzalone. So Jack Campbell, I think, bottom line, is cemented there. And Alex Anzalone, I'm quite frankly a little bit worried about if they do bring in a second linebacker. Then you got guys going after, Levante David is a fine pick there. I believe he had the most sacks as a linebacker last year, and tackle still about 120. That's all we need. If he can have that repeated production, love Levante there. Quincy Williams, a good, bad taste in our mouth pick here. I do think he recovers. No CJ Mosley. It's going to be him and Sherwood. So I like both of those linebackers in New York. Grant Delpit, fine defensive back. He's a model of consistency there. Not the biggest upside, but a safe floor. So I like him. And then one more sleeper before I get into my second pick. Cooper Kupp, man, look at this. 16 in 8th round. 16th round, 8th pick. Super late here. I think Cooper Kupp deserves a little bit more than that. So great pick by Mace there. And finally, Azeez Al-Shaair. This is what I'm talking about. So I did have 3 top LB1s, I'll call them. And then I'm looking at a guy like Azeez Al-Shaair. Maybe I could have went Schlesinger. Maybe I could have went. There's another linebacker down there. Tyrese Knight I liked a lot too. That's kind of where you're looking at your LB2s. Azeez Al-Shaair, though, I think is I made the pick because I do think he is the LB1, the guy who, when there's a lot of uncertainty in that linebacking core, we know who Azeez Al-Shaair is, and he didn't get a fair shake last year, had injuries, had suspensions, and left us with a bad taste in our mouths once again. But I'm willing to forgive Azeez Al-Shaair here, and this is kind of like the end of the stud linebacker. So now we'll get into some great defensive linemen, some great defensive backs, but that's why we want to pounce on those linebackers. So you're not depending on Azeez Al-Shaair to find out who he is as your LB1, LB2. So still think it was a nice pick, and I think Al-Shaair is underrated this year.
Sure. Yeah, just a guy who's got 160 tackle upside. I think everyone's concern is just the amount of kind of talent in that linebacker room right now, and the fact that maybe because he missed time, maybe people might be worried that I don't know, Christian Harris can perform, and maybe they become some sort of rotation just because of their kind of like EJ Speed, Christian Harris. I mean, they've got guys who put it on the field, and maybe that's what people are worried about. Because I know EJ Speed haven't been a guy who's had an outstanding kind of floor the last couple of seasons as a waiver wire darling. Now suddenly just being left to the wayside in drafts, I can only imagine it's because people are just worried about the uncertainty kind of in this linebacker room and how it might shake out. Just because usually you'll see a team sign a couple of stud linebackers, and then the replacement is pretty well obviously a replacement. Well, now we've got the linebacker 2, 3, and 4 are kind of not really all that far from each other. And it's not like, Azeez Al-Shaair does have, significantly more upside than the rest of them, but he hasn't really put up a whole lot of year-over-year production. So, yes, he does kind of stand out, but at the same time, it's all kind of well within grasp of anybody. If people, more than one guy is performing, who's to say that they don't throw out some sort of rotation or something gets shook up? But nonetheless, if things go right, I think Azeez Al-Shaair, you got a definite solid pick there. I imagine he's I don't know who. Do we know who? Is it Jaylen Petrie that calls the plays in Houston? I forget who the green dot guy is. I don't know if it's.
I think it was Azeez. I think it was Azeez.
If he's the green dot, then we can pretty well bank on him seeing 100% of snaps on a regular basis, and we know he's the guy. So I guess if you add that factor in there, then we're not we feel a little bit more secure about an Azeez Al-Shaair. So I could just devil's advocate. Maybe that's what people are worried about, is that maybe there might be some sort of rotation here in this linebacking room. But
and I will say this: I do think, looking back how it shook out, looking at the draft board now, Gump. I've been saying his name a couple of times. Shout out Gump with Carson Schlesinger. Maybe looking back, maybe that's a little bit of a safer pick than Azeez Al-Shaair. Not sure of his upside, but I do like the rookies to be hungry, come in and be tackle machines. He is a little bit fresh. He had one good year last year at UCLA, one phenomenal year, I should say. Phenomenal, no way around it. But I maybe look at hindsight, I would have taken Schlesinger a little bit over Azeez Al-Shaair, but it is what it is here. Good pick.
Yeah, Nix didn't retire when we drafted, so there was still that in play.
True.
That pick back then.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're adding, a little context here, kind of like I think my earlier play with Joe Mixon, I took him assuming that he was probably going to be pretty well good to go for week 1. So, just adding a little context like that kind of help our viewers out here. So, then a couple of quick hitters. We were at 16th round. I kind of like that Deebo Samuel pick there for at 16.5. I don't anticipate a wide receiver 1 season, but I think maybe this could add a little bit more juice to his career after kind of falling off last year, where this team kind of needs some more playmakers. They were just running off the back of Terry McLaurin last year and Brian Robinson in the red zone, and then Jaden Daniels just was making everything happen in between. So I think a guy like Deebo Samuel will give this team kind of more options to kind of operate from.
That's been Washington's problem for many years now, is there's no wide receiver 2 in that room. So hopefully Deebo's the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go on and, a couple of picks. Jaden Blue, Trey Benson, I think more or less handcuff kind of picks. I'm not super excited about about guys like that, but at this point in the draft, if you want to take swings or something, by all means. I just personally feel that there's too much value that can actually help you in your starting roster at this point in the draft to pass on those guys like Levante Davids, your Terrell Bernard, Edge Coopers. I mean, all of these IDPs are going to put points on the board for you. To me, it doesn't quite make much sense to add a dart throw here in the 15th round, but depending on your roster makeup, you might be able to kind of take those shots if you kind of have a good feeling about it, and you just hope that maybe you don't dive too deep into those shots. Taking dart throws here and there is okay, but you dive too much into dart throws, you're just kind of clogging your roster. But
there's a name you guys skipped over here, Frankie Luvu. What are your guys' thoughts with him? I feel like he had a very interesting year last year. Bobby Wagner's hitting that father age thing.
mm-hmm. I like Frankie Luvu. I think he's got a lot. His 80. Well, often in the drafts that I'm in, Frankie Luvu goes way too high for me. He often goes up there with just behind like your Foyers and stuff in all IDP drafts. So I think this is actually pretty good value for a guy like Frankie Luvu going more as a linebacker 2-3 type. Because yes, the sack upside is going to be great for us this year, but he just doesn't quite have the kind of tackling floor we want to see from a linebacker 1. And frankly, he's not going to rush the passer enough for me to completely draft him as an LB1 just based purely on that sack upside. I do like Frankie Luvu. I think he's given us I think he's going to give us a good floor this year. He's going to be a good player, but I think maybe the community might need to temper expectations. I like this value here at 17.7. I think this is more appropriate for a guy like Frankie Luvu.
I like Luvu more in best ball. I'm not a redraft guy. I don't want to fight that battle. He's like a 6 or 14 kind of guy. He doesn't
want that consistency.
So I'm not looking to fight that battle. But in best ball, there are absolutely games who have 18, 20 points. So it's a better pick there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go ahead and recap my couple of picks here quickly, and then we'll jump into Rich's, and we'll move on to the next handful of rounds. I'll probably read off let's see. We went 15, 16 just now?
Yes. Yeah, we're on Bernard and Levante for you.
Okay, so then we might just, after these couple of picks, we'll read off the next several rounds. You guys finish up your picks, and then we can talk about everything kind of in between. But I'll quickly touch on Bernard. He's a guy who I think was on pace for 130-plus tackles last year. A guy who's already put up 140 overall and placed in the top as an LB1. And to me, to get him as an LB3 here, and where often he's ranked as an LB1. Rankings everywhere. I think we were putting out rankings earlier this year where Terrell Bernard was among the top 15 linebackers. Now I'm getting him in the 20s. I feel like this is great value for a guy who's going to be in the middle of this defense. And we've seen even when Dorian Williams came in replacement a couple years ago where he was averaging 10 tackles a game. I think the role is just great when you can find a full-time role in a rotational type of defense. I think that just kind of sets you apart from there's not a whole lot of Buffalo Bills that I like to roster, but if there was anybody that I do, definitely Terrell Bernard, one of the few guys who's going to be getting full-time snaps and kind of has the upside that he has. So I feel like I kind of got a steal here at 15th round. I don't think his injury last year was significant by any stretch, so not sure why the fall down in ADP, because he did finish the season strong with the last 4 games. He had, 40 or 40-plus tackles. So he definitely ended the season strong, and I think we could be looking at more of that to come for this year. And then Levante David, just a high floor player for much of his career. It could be a fall off year at this point. It could be any time now, but he's nonetheless going to be out there for a majority of snaps. His role's not going to change. He is cemented in this defense. We know what Levante David is. Levante David is going to give you 120 plus 120 so tackles. He's going to be rushing the passer, give you that big play upside. And he's a guy that's going to give you a good floor week in and week out. And he's not really going to fall down and give you any zero burgers by any stretch of the imagination. A guy that you can set and forget. And honestly, I love Levante David to kind of be a staple LB3 type for fantasy rosters.
His consistency is just so impressive, especially at his age.
Look at the stat sheet
every year, and it's
forced fumbles.
The same.
Yeah, it's wild. So if I can get a stalwart like this as an LB3, man, I feel pretty damn good. So there's my mindset there behind Terrell Bernard and Levante David. So let's get into Greg Rousseau and Jack Campbell. I'm gonna give you a little pushback here, Rich, because I'm a lot of people are big on Greg Rousseau, and the talent is absolutely there. But to me, it's been the team deployed him more than they ever have deployed a defensive lineman. He saw the most snaps in rotation for a full season since the Doug McDermott era started in 2018. And the fact that things kind of went wrong on the defensive line. We saw a lot of injuries happen to this Bills team last year. It just leads me to believe, especially coupled with the signings of Joey Bosa, and they have who was it? Michael Hoyt. They've added some respectable depth to this team, and to me, it seems like maybe the Bills are. They don't want Greg Rousseau on the field 69% of the snaps like he was last year, because historically they are rotating about 60% or less among the entire defensive line, no matter who was there. Because I just remember years and years and years, we're like, we got this talent on the defensive line for the Buffalo Bills. This guy is it. Put him out there. Play him more than half the snaps. Quit this rotation crap. But it seems like no matter what we desire in fantasy football, the Bills just don't really care about our IDP production. But to me, it just felt like maybe the signings adding more depth to this defensive line just spoke to the fact that they didn't want him on the field as much, because they wanted to keep him on the field for a longer term. They're worried. I think that's probably a big reason why they're able to keep guys fresh much of the time, is because of the rotation. So there's method to the madness that, rotate guys in. You have less injuries. I think things just kind of went wrong last year. They had him out there and they're like, we're not going to do this again. We're going to draft it, or we're going to sign a Joey Bosa. Michael Hoyt gives this guy some backup so we can get him a breather and he can stay even more efficient on the field. So maybe he does become more efficient this year with the kind of snaps that he has, and he kind of broke that ceiling of sorts that he kind of had placed on himself this year. Maybe he does kind of get in on more big plays and stuff like that. But just the signings and everything kind of had me nervous on Greg Rousseau, but I know that he's really climbing up the ADP and draft boards. So why don't you elaborate on your kind of allure for Greg Rousseau here in the 15th round? I don't think it's a wasted pick by any stretch. So don't get me wrong there. At 15th round as the DL here, I think Greg Rousseau definitely has some upside that you like to see in the 15th round.
The next time we do this, I'll have to write some stats about all your guys too, just so I'm
I only know that one because I did the Team Fantasy Focus preview a few weeks ago, and I just talked about.
No, I appreciate it, man. We're honest here. Man, I said some bad news is coming, and I think Rousseau's one of those picks I'm not very confident in, and that's very good analysis, Axe. I didn't honestly know a ton about, I think, the how would you say, the rotation there and how the Bills work in that regard. However, Joey Bosa, I'm not too worried.
Yeah.
His consistency year over year is not there at all. He's had injury issues for a very long time.
Yep.
And I drafted him the last 2 years, and the last 2 years I was destroyed by any value there at all. So, I mean, even him in the rotation, I'm not that concerned. Michael Hoyt as well. Like I think like there is some upside here. He showed some growth, and maybe in that anchor role, this could be the year where he moves forward. But yeah, I do draft a couple more defensive linemen very quickly in following him, kind of for that reason. I wasn't too sure about this pick. I waited a while to get my second guy. Max Crosby was way up on the board for me, so this is my number 2. But appreciate the feedback there. And next, Jack Campbell. A green dot, easy backup. And this is my first backup, so this would obviously be my flex pick for IDP, and very happy with a solid linebacker there for my flex spot. So I am maybe jumping away on defensive linemen here. Maybe I'm not as educated there compared to you guys on that, but I do a lot of best balls, and maybe that's why my Greg Rousseau is coming up too early in the draft. So,
Well, not even necessarily too early. He's got the upside that I think he could definitely return you that 15th round value. So I think you got him at good value. I think it's often where I see him go in the best balls is like a second or third round value in all IDP drafts, which would have put him about 6 or 7 rounds higher here. So just generally speaking, is more what I was talking to, but I think you got him probably at a more value that I would feel a lot more comfortable with. So not to take away from your pick, I think he definitely has a good floor play. I just kind of worry that maybe a lot of us in the community are kind of hoping for that ceiling to just completely hit this season, and I think maybe the expectations might need to be tempered. But this value is great. I think this is a good pick, and then you turn around and you grab a guy like DeForest Buckner with the outstanding tackle floor to kind of solidify that defensive line.
That's my consistency guy.
So, yeah, even when you take those shots, turning around and kind of adding a little bit of insurance is a good play there. So not to take away from Greg Rousseau, definitely a solid player and a good pick there in the 15th round. Just kind of has me nervous. I haven't been able to pull the trigger, but he's a guy that I've always liked for sure, no doubt. So definitely.
Yeah, Jack Campbell there, 125 tackles last year. It
Not,
was a
yeah.
little slow that first year, but last year he kind of showed why he had that draft capital a number of years ago. So
Yep,
I'm
he's one of
excited
the few
there.
healthy guys there too. Even if they signed Kaiser White, I don't think we worry about anything coming off of Jack Campbell's plate at all. So I
And where
think
did
he's
where
well.
did Anzalone go? Did he go before?
Where did Ants? I don't think he's even gone yet, to be
Oh, he's not
honest.
even gone. Okay.
No, he's 21.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely a good play there in Jack Campbell getting a top end young linebacker who is ascending in the 16th round. All right, so rounding out, let's go into 17th. We're going to go rapid fire 17 through 20, and we'll just kind of quickly touch on our guys and add any kind of context on the in betweens. So rapid fire here. Jeremy Chin starts off round 17 at the first pick. Jonathan Cooper goes 17-2 to Johnny's team. Then Patrick Queen, Jaylen Walker, Carson Swessinger, Brandon Ayuk, Frankie Luvu, Justin Herbert. I took Juwan Jennings at 17-9. And then Rich rounds out round 17 with DeForest Buckner. He then turns around at the turn, takes Jacoby Myers at 18-1. I grab my first defensive back in Xavier McKinney. Then goes Jack Besh, Quay Walker, CJ Stroud, Jalen Carter, Cam Ward, Montez Sweat. I like that pick there in the 18th round. I think he's an outstanding value this year. Potential deal, not the DL1, but a top 12 defensive lineman in that kind of upside there. Then 18-9, Tyler Nubin goes to Johnny as his second defensive back after Antoine Winfield a few rounds before. Then to round out round 18 is Darnell Mooney. Now, if we go into round 19, we're looking at J.K. Dobbins in the first pick. Alex Highsmith goes to Johnny for pick 19-2. Then goes Bashal Tootin, Tyrone Tracy, Devin Lloyd, Kayvon Thibodeau, Nakobe Dean in pick 19-7. Dylan Sampson, 19-8. I took Zach Sieler at 19-9. Will McDonald rounds it out to Rich's team at the 19-10. Then at the turn, Josie Jewell. Rich takes Josie Jewell and pick 20-01. I took Tui Tuipulotu at 22. I think Rich is probably going to elaborate on that Josie Jewell pick. I think that was we picked this and then the
Yeah.
drafted this a week or so ago, and the news came out about Josie Jewell. So I know maybe we'll talk about who you might have taken instead had you known that injury. But we'll finish out this round here. JJ McCarthy goes 20.3. Brandon Jones goes next. Tyrese Nye, Byron Young, Kyle Williams, Nolan Smith, Rashid Shaheed, Dejani Kristafi here at 20.9. And then Evan Ingram rounds out the round 20. Going to for trouble there to round out the last round here we're going to cover. So, Johnny, why don't you jump in? Talk to us a little bit about Jonathan Cooper, your mindset behind there, because he's a guy that I like for a top end pass rush for Denver, and a guy who's really come onto the scene the last couple of years, an underappreciated defensive lineman, someone who I'd like to kind of go after I've grabbed a couple of top tier linebackers like we were talking about earlier, where we're kind of fading the defensive line position because there's just so much value in these middle rounds. And I'll even elaborate as well in the later rounds on my picks where I took a couple of guys as well that I kind of like at this same kind of area of the defensive line. Then Tyler Nubin, an ascending defensive back for the Giants, a guy we expect to see a lot of box snaps. Alex Highsmith, I think at this point is a great value. He's not more of a best ball guy for me, but at this point in the draft, I feel like you're getting a guy with good upside and who's actually kind of putting a floor under himself in terms of IDP production. So I think we could see a little more consistency from him this year. Then Rashid Shaheed, definitely a guy who's going to see plenty of targets this year. The only thing maybe personally I worry about is what does Tyler Shuck look like this year? But in all honesty, it could be a swing and a miss, or it could be a huge hit. And I think if there's going to be big plays happen on this team, I think it's going to be Rashid Shaheed that is the beneficiary of it. He's the big play guy who's going to be leaking through the defense and catching bombs for some big touchdowns as he did kind of last year. So we just hope that maybe he can get back to that and kind of develop some chemistry there with Tyler Shuck, the rookie quarterback. So why don't you elaborate on these last four picks here?
Yeah, no doubt. So I'll start off with Jonathan Cooper, a guy who yourself, myself, Gary Van Dyke, in podcast last year were all over with. In a world where we're focusing on sacks and we want 15, 16 sacks by our fantasy players, and we know, in big play scoring, that's great. Jonathan Cooper gets a big edge in tackle heavy scoring. And to me, I mean, it doesn't matter, what scoring you're at. He backed it up last year. Coming into 2023, he only had 2.5 sacks was his limit, but the tackles were there. So we were a little bit, on the map with Jonathan Cooper. We're seeing if he could take that step forward. And then last year, it completely blew up with the sacks. I mean, he's had 19 sacks over the past 2 years, over 130 tackles over the past 2 years. Last year specifically, the tackles were about where we wanted. They fell a little bit from 70 to 58, but you'll hear me say now, and I've said it before. If you can give me 50 tackles and about 5 to 10 sacks, that's a very startable player. Well, Jonathan Cooper backed that up last year with 58 tackles and 10 and a half sacks. I was not expecting the sacks. I was expecting the tackles. Something's got to give here. I don't know that he's going to go and have 70 tackles and 12 sacks this year. I'm not going to say that. Maybe if he can land somewhere between 23 and 2024 production, either way, we'll take either of those years. The last 2 years have been great. He's only 27 years old. Him and Nick Bonito are great DLs to have here. Nick Bonito is not going to fly under the radar as much as Cooper, though. So, I love Nick Bonito. Let people jump a little bit earlier, but Jonathan Cooper shows us dependable tackle ability as well as a growing, advantage in sack opportunity. So, love Jonathan Cooper. That's one of the DL sleepers here. Moving into the next guy, Tyler Nubin. I got Tyler Nubin as DB12 in this this particular draft, but I have him ranked much higher. I actually think Sleeper had him 5 or 6 defensive backs later, but I went ahead and made the jump. I wanted to talk about him on this show. We saw flashes of dominance last year. I think there were 3 games in a row where Tyler Nubin had 10 or more tackles, and that's really what I'm putting the microscope on. Injuries happened. The team looks different than it did last year, but I believe he was a second-round player last year, and this is a big investment. Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota was a great prospect coming into the league, and he backed that up with a few, not a full season, but in a few of those games, 10 or more tackles. That's what we're here for. Maybe he adds in some splash plays, but I do see Tyler Nubin, putting up that consistent 6 to 8 tackle games, and for a defensive back, that's pretty elite. So Tyler Nubin, definitely somebody who I think could finish the year as a top 3 defensive back, and he just went right inside the top 12. So I think great value here. He's a big sleeper of mine. Moving on to Alex Highsmith. Alex Highsmith, man, I mean, what else do you want from the guy? I mean, last year, I understand only 11 games, but those 11 games, what more could he have done? 45 tackles, 6 sacks. Maybe if he plays full 17 games, that's about Jonathan Cooper numbers, right? 60, 70 tackles, 8 to 10 sacks. So Alex Highsmith, again, only 27 years old, is in a long-term contract. I believe he's coming into the second or third year of that multi-year extension. So Alex Highsmith is not going anywhere. He's paid. And TJ Watt, I just want to say, is he got that big deal. Things are looking great. We're comforted to hear about TJ Watt. But I think this is the year where Alex Highsmith, and especially the Nick Herbig step up a little bit. I don't think that TJ Watt is going to have 89, 88% of defensive snaps by 2025 year's end. So Alex Highsmith, again, had he stayed healthy, which he's been able to, until this point in his career, I think that he would have had terrific numbers, and I got him as DL24 here. I will take him in every draft at that price if I can get him. I'm not, all in on the sacks. I'm not all in on the tackles. He does a nice blend here for me. So, whether it be Cooper or Highsmith, in this case, I got both. Those are the defensive linemen that I'm trying to build my team around. So, great value here with those guys. If you can get them that late, it's a huge boom for your team in IDP. And then finally, Rashid Shaheed. I wanted to talk about him, just put him on the map here. I got him with my 20th pick very late. I did not see it coming last year when he started the year off so hot, hitting those deep balls. And I do play in a lot of return yard leagues. So if you're somebody out there who your league has return yards, just verify that he is returning punts. I'm not sure if he was doing kicks as well, but Rashid Shaheed, I'm not counting him out, even off that big-time knee injury. Still only, 26 years old. We do have the quarterback mix-up. But one thing about Rashid Shaheed is he was never really a volume guy. So if you ask me, Chris Olave, am I worried about him? Well, sure. Olave has concussion histories. He does depend on volume. I'm a little bit more worried for Olave, but Rashid Shaheed can make his meal with one given catch. So he can have that one catch for 45 yards and be a 45-yard touchdown, and you're sitting pretty for the week. So great bet, and especially in best ball. I'm not saying every week it's going to pop, but they got to throw to somebody. And I imagine New Orleans still being down in games. So Rashid Shaheed, I've counted him out before, and it's backfired. I've watched him go off on somebody else's team. So I'm not going to let that happen again this year.
Yeah, I hear that. I like those picks to kind of round it out there. Then if we go a little bit deeper, you grabbed a guy like Jermaine Pratt, should be on the field plenty for Vegas later this year. RB1 for New England, and Ramondre Stevenson later in the draft as well. I think that's a sneaky value. Then the upside guy and a rookie linebacker like Demetrius Knight playing alongside Logan Wilson there. He double dipped into Cincinnati well there, but you're definitely going to get the one that pops, or if they both pop, you got them both. So good plays there later on as well. Then Akeem Davis-Gaither, a guy who put some stats in the box score last year with some opportunity, and now gets a full-time role, hopefully with Arizona. We just kind of got to wait and see what that might look like, who gets what role in Arizona. But just the next couple of rounds there to talk about Johnny's team. So let's.
You mind if I pop in real quick, Alex? I just want to touch a couple of these guys real quick.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Ramondre Stevenson here. Don't forget about him. This is I understand this is a split backfield. He might take the back seat. He might not. I mean, Travion Henderson was not a goal line back in college, and Ramondre Stevenson has coach's knowledge. He's been there. He has that veterancy. He's not very over the hill, right? He's still in his 20s. So Ramondre Stevenson, I know he had fumbling issues too, but that could easily happen to the rookie. So don't exactly forget about him. He still needs to be drafted. Wasn't exactly looking running back here. I was fine in that regard, but I just wanted to put him on the map and say, if you're this late, I mean, yeah, he's a handcuff basically being drafted as, but I think he has more standalone value than Charbonnet. I think he has more standalone value than Tootin right now, right? Some of these other running backs that have been taken. Of course, Javonte Williams, Jaylen Wright, the last couple running backs taken. He's in the same realm as these guys, but technically I do think right now he is the starter. So I'm not saying go ahead, draft him early as the starting running back, but if you can get him this late, I think it's a great pick. Don't give up on Ramondre Stevenson. Akeem Davis-Gaither, he is the starter right now, but I've been preaching the name Cody Simon all offseason. I don't know that, Akeem Davis-Gaither is going to be a starter. I was just kind of looking back, to try to find starters, and that's a tough thing down here. I mean, you got Ivan Pace, he's left us with a bad taste in our mouth, but huge potential. Tyrell Dodson maybe would have been a fine pick there, a little bit safer. But Akeem Davis-Gaither, if he does, whoever gets that middle linebacking job in Arizona, I think is going to pay huge dividends. Could be Davis, and we've seen him blossom in Cincinnati. If not, Cody Simon, and I'm all wheels up on him. So just a couple other things I wanted to mention. Dak Prescott, boom. This is by design. That's why we don't take quarterbacks early. People took them in the second, third round. I'm down here 25th round with Dak Prescott. And if you watched the first episode, you heard me say I think this is the year of the Dak. Just airing it out to CeeDee Lamb, airing it out to George Pickens, best wide receiver duo he's had, and the lowest price we've ever seen Dak Prescott. So, yeah, I'm glad he got a little hurt last year. I stacked my whole team and now come back to Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, these guys, last round quarterbacks. That's the way to do it, in my opinion. But, to each their own. And finally, Tyke Smith. Not saying he needed to be drafted. There was probably some other defensive backs who I could have drafted with more bankability. But again, another defensive back, one of my breakouts that I've been talking about, looking to play the strong safety role, play the nickel role last year. They're pretty similar, they're in the defensive back world and on the realm of defense. So great pairing with not only teammates here on my fantasy team, but teammates in real life with Tyke Smith and Antoine Winfield. So Tyke Smith, if you're really deep defensive back, you really have no names left, check to see if Tyke Smith's available. He had great interception, forced fumble abilities last year. Maybe that's not as apparent with the starting strong safety role. And granted, he has to keep that role, but Tyke Smith is definitely a sleeper to talk about this offseason.
Good stuff. Love that. Okay, we'll get back to round 17. We'll round out Rich's picks, and I'll chat on mine, and we'll kind of round it out here. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit, pay some bills here, talk a little bit about Bob Lung's Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. So go over to Amazon.com, get a leg up on your opponents with Bob Lung's 10th annual edition of the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide for 2025. Purchase yours for a measly $15 on Amazon.com. Just search 2025 Fantasy Football Consistency Guide and get yours today. So now let's wrap up Rich's picks. Rich, you took after Jack Campbell in the 17th round. You turn around and took DeForest Buckner, good floor play defensive lineman. A little age or wear on the tires, but definitely a guy who's putting up more than his fair share of tackles. An above average producer in that regard. A guy who's going to get a handful of sacks throughout the season as well. I like that pick in the 17th round. Then you got Jacoby Myers in the 18th round, a good wide receiver one for Vegas. He was on a team who's trending upwards. I like that pick for Jacoby Myers as well. Then you also got some Will McDonald there in the 19th round, a good high upside guy. Doesn't quite have the kind of tackle floor that we like to see, but definitely an ascending player for the New York Jets. He ought to be on the field a lot, and I think maybe we can even expect a little bit positive regression from him as well. Then you got Josie Jewell there in round 20. Maybe when we get into your picks, you talk about alternatives you might have taken or something as well. Nonetheless, if you would have played, I like that pick even at this point. Then you've got Jaquan Brisker, a high upside defensive back later on. Jared Goff is your quarterback too. Deshaun Elliott, a good floor player for defensive back, another one as well, and Mo Rig. And then a guy who can get in and get some pass deflections in Kyle Duggar. And then you round out the draft with a guy who's actually historically been a nice LB2, and Drake Greenlaw just coming off an injury next to Alex Singleton there in Denver. So I don't mind that play later on, especially a guy who could definitely put up more numbers, put up far better numbers than where you drafted him. So that's a good play to round out the draft there at the linebacker position. So elaborate here on kind of the rest of your draft.
Yeah. I think you hit on a lot of it, but I'll go through. Buckner, that week by week consistency when he's healthy is what I'm going for. 70 to 80 tackles, 6 to 8 sacks. Like, you're talking about a solid performer week after week, and that's kind of a sit and forget kind of DL. So maybe he's my solid one, and I mix in a few others between him and Max Crosby as my starting two. I think that's kind of the move I made there. Um, Jacoby Myers, yeah, well, 11 to 12 yards per carry, or per catch. The Raiders are struggling a lot last year. I think the hope is they get a little more consistency here. They might not throw it out as often, but he is the wide receiver one on that team, and getting a wide receiver one this late in the draft is always a great thing. Year after year, he's shown that consistent wide receiver one status, and I don't see much changing on that team. It's just whether or not he's going to get the ball as much. He has that like streamer sort of uh, upside, so he's probably a good flex slot here and there depending on who he's playing, and that's kind of how I saw him as a value there a
Sure.
little later in the draft. And then Will McDonald, he had a good year last year. I think everyone was suspicious his first year of whether or not he could eat up that round one talent, and I think his week to week consistency isn't quite there yet, but I'm hoping for growth. I think we all are at this point. His ceiling is high. He's got some great weeks there, but also some very down weeks, and that could be another streamer. Just kind of have to play it smart on who he's going up against. Would be generally my take there. I do think DL's probably my weakest part of my draft here. Uh, I always go late on defensive back, and that's kind of the strategy I follow. I think Dynasty Santa taught me that one. Um, let's see who we got here, and then yeah, Josie Jewell. Yeah, very unfortunate injury. I hate to hear that about anyone. 6 months later, having concussion issues is just so terrible. Um, I hope he gets. I hope he stays healthy. He leaves the league if he needs to. Like that is not something
Yeah.
that's good for anyone's body. Um, yeah, I drafted him purely because those weeks he played last year, he was phenomenal. So if he does land on a team later in the year, I do think that pick could hold up. But at this point, I probably would have drafted a different linebacker. I could have gone a different DL here too. Looking at the board, I I do like Demario Davis going in the next round. I
Yep.
think he's got very consistent year over year. He's getting a little old, but some of these older guys are very good later on in their career. Bobby Wagner. and Levante David. Like he's one of those guys. Cody Barton would be probably my other pick there. I think Cody Barton is LB1 right there on the Titans. Titans are always an interesting team for linebackers. Ernest Jones uh, kind of showed not a lot of steam there, and I feel like year after year they changed something drastic on that team. But I mean, Cody Barton has shown year after year he's undervalued, and then he gets those 100 tackles year after year. So I could see him being a value there. Uh, and then yeah, I'll go quickly through my DBs. I'm not a huge DB guy, so I don't know a lot of details here. But Brisker, I think he had 1 year off, but those stats a year back were amazing. Hope to see that he can bring that back. It's incredibly hard to gauge whether or not defensive backs will continue a performance year over year. Jared Goff, the feedback on Jared Goff is always too many touchdowns. A little worried that that's a problem, and he'll be overdrafted in that regard. But I mean, if you look at his yards year over year, he's always hitting 4,000 the last few years. So I'm not too concerned as to him as my QB too. Um, this was I think we could have gone a little more rounds in this mock to have everyone on our bench.
Sure.
So I just picked him for his value at that point. Deshaun Elliott, yeah, first defensive back on that team, especially after they let go, or
I
sorry,
mean,
especially after they grabbed him from the Dolphins, right?
mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
I
Dolphins kind of traded even back last year. He came from the Dolphins. Now Minka goes to the Dolphins, and they trade again this year. So I think we could see some more snaps from Deshaun Elliott, a good floor player too.
yeah, excited there. Yeah, I feel like this is where I look to see what the stats were last year and kind of gauge whether or not they could hit that similar area this year. If there's a lot of change in the um, if they're going to lose any snaps to any people coming in rookies or otherwise. So to round it out here, Morig had an amazing year last year with the Raiders. Going over to Carolina, should be the first guy in the room there. Switching teams, that's a little bit of a risk, and that's where you got to take them though. Like I think he was somebody I drafted very late last year and was very happy with. So figured why not another year in a row. And then I think you said it about Duggar. He has that pass defense upside, and he's kind of a staple there for the Pats. And hoping good things. Sorry, I don't know.
No, you're good. I'm not familiar. I go with big names and defensive backs too, because there's a few where you saw I called out last time. Kevin Byard, just a solid floor play guy.
I will say, looking at yours,
Go ahead.
is it Carly's?
Carly's Jaylen Carly's, yeah.
Yeah, like I'm seeing him drafted so high this year, but you'll get to yours. That was a great pick by you. I think in one, you have to make sure that your fantasy supports him as a DBLB. I think in my flea flicker, he's just considered a linebacker, so he might not have that upside.
Right. Yeah. Definitely something to pay attention to, because if he is strictly a linebacker, that changes the game a little bit. Where, the upside isn't quite as great when you're comparing him to other linebackers. But if he has a linebacker role and you can slot him into the defensive back slot, yes, you got a nice floor play there. But yeah, so let's see.
And then
Touching
yeah,
on
Dre Greenwald just to close it off, like very highly a solid LB2 on that team. Hope he's past his injuries and he's got a new start after the 49ers, but one would expect him to have some a really high floor, and that's generally why I drafted him at that point. But
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the only competition he's got is Drew Sanders, who I think primarily lines up as an edge rusher.
And he's out right now. Drew Sanders just got MRI yesterday, waiting to hear what the results were. But yeah, Dre Greenlaw, I mean, he had injuries of his own. I think he tore a quad early in like March, May. So let's see if he can show up healthy. It's just been injury after injury. He should be a banger next to Singleton if he's healthy, though.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we're well deep into this episode, but I'll go ahead and quickly go through the rest of my team here as well, and then we'll get some parting words before we get out of here. In the 17th round, I took Juwan Jennings at pick 17-9, Xavier McKinney at 18-2, then turn around and get Zach Sieler in the 19th round, Tui Tuipulotu in the 20th. Then I rounded out with Trey Harris in the 21st, Kobe Turner in the 22nd, Chris Jones in the 23rd, Jalen Carleys in the 24th, Kevin Byard, and then Jordan Love in the last round. Talking a little bit about my pick in Juwan Jennings, I grabbed probably way too many San Francisco 49ers, but again, as I mentioned last episode, the schedule is just super, super sweet. If I can get more pieces of a high-powered offense with great coaching, I think everybody on this team is going to have a solid floor for this season. And considering Brandon Ayuk is now starting on PUP, we've seen Ricky Pearsall now have some soft tissue injuries, which doesn't really bode well for the season. Because those things can tend to kind of linger on much into the season if he doesn't completely cut out all practices and just look to get healthy. So in that regard, Juwan Jennings could easily be the top pass catcher. And we saw him last year where he had some pretty high upside and some trust from Brock Purdy as well, where things weren't going right. He knew he could go to Juwan Jennings. If nothing else. So I think Juwan Jennings presents a high upside, definitely a low floor kind of player, but a guy who I'm going to be probably keeping on my bench and just kind of keep an eye on him because if things go right, he could be wide receiver 1. We could see some pretty good production from a guy like him. Then Xavier McKinney is actually one of the few defensive backs that we say we can't anticipate or predict interceptions, but he's a guy who's had 2 or 3 every single year. And he always historically gets in on some pass breakups. He puts up a nice little tackle floor for us. Nothing overly flashy, but a guy who's getting in and making big plays. And a defensive back here, I think he's a guy who probably has set himself among the higher floors of the defensive back position. A guy who just kind of ends up finishing pretty respectably every year. Early in his career, I wasn't as much of a fan, but he's put up some nice year-over-year numbers, and I'm kind of buying in a little bit on him now. Now I went into Zach Sieler in the 19th round. Again, I was talking about earlier how we were kind of fading defensive line. There's a lot of good defensive linemen here in the middle rounds. Zach Sieler is one of the top defensive tackles in the league, and I'm getting him here in the 19th round. He's a great floor player with 60 to 70 tackle floor for a defensive lineman. That is well above average. So having a nice floor to start and then having a 10 sack upside for a guy like Zach Sieler from the defensive interior, I think set my defensive line up pretty nice to kind of have a set and forget even in the middle rounds, drafting much of my roster there. Then I turn around and take Tui Tuipulotu in the 20th round. It's a little bit of an upside swing here because Tui hasn't put anything quite on the field. We did see a stretch there last season where he was getting a handful of sacks in. He had quite a high week-to-week upside where we saw him get 2 sacks, 3 sacks in a game. But again, a short stretch, small sample size there. But he jumps into now a full-time role with Joey Bosa now leaving the team. And it's a little bit thinner there on the edges than in LA. So I think the team pretty well saw what they wanted to see out of Tui last year with his opportunity, and now they feel comfortable throwing him into a full-time role. So we'll see exactly what kind of snap share he's going to get this year, but I think he's going to be looking at he's probably looking at like a pretty high upside and maybe a low floor kind of player, but we'll see what he can develop into. I hope he can kind of build a floor under himself. And
Khalil Mack still getting the double teams too, I think would really help him.
Yeah, absolutely. So I took kind of an upside swing at Tuipulotu, but I like that value there in the 20th round. So then I turned around, took another Charger and Trey Harris, a rookie wide receiver. This was after Mike Williams had retired, so to me that he's the big play wide receiver there in LA, and Justin Herbert does pretty well with some big play wide receivers. Mike Williams wasn't an overly flashy guy, but a guy who could have some pretty big spike weeks, and I think Trey Harris, with the kind of prowess he brings from college football, having been, I think early in the season, from what I understand, was putting up insane stats in his last collegiate season, but now coming into the NFL, projected to be the big play wide receiver for a nice quarterback in Justin Herbert. I just kind of like the upside there. Another swing. We don't quite know what the floor is going to look like, but as the wide receiver 2 for a nice, accurate quarterback, I think I'm willing to take a risk on Trey Harris at this point. So then I turn around and take Kobe Turner in the 22nd round, and then Chris Jones, 2 floor play guys. I think Chris Jones is a severely undervalued guy this year who's finished as a top 5 defensive lineman overall, and it's now kind of being left for dead here in the 23rd round, a guy who I expect to have Positive regression this season. If I remember right, he had his worst season last year since about his rookie year. So to me, for a guy who's put up the kind of consistency that he has over year, for him to have a career low since year one just spells positive regression for me. And considering the state of this defense, nothing's really changed. I anticipate Chris Jones to really beef up the kind of production that we saw last year to get kind of back to the pre 2024 mold that we saw from him carrying into much of his career. And then Kobe Turner, a guy who's putting up incredible 80 plus tackle numbers each of his first couple of years and flirting with 8 to 10 sacks as well. So he's definitely a solid floor play guy that I feel comfortable putting in there, who's not going to have too many low end weeks. He's just going to fall off the board. A guy who's going to put up a nice floor of about 5-6 tackles a game and have upside of 7, 8, 9, and then even be able to get a sack there. Nothing overly flashy, but I like my defensive linemen to have a high floor. Not really too worried about that upside in managed leagues. Now in best ball, it takes some more swings, but and I think I did take some more upside swings in like a 2E, but definitely like to have a solid floor there for defensive line. Then I turn around and take Jaylen Carley. He's a guy who's kind of a little bit of a cheat code if he gets that linebacker DB designation and ends up playing linebacker. I think he is a nice play to have in your DB position, where the opportunity could let him get 7, 8 tackles a game or more if things go right. So we're just going to have to see how this plays out in Indianapolis. They've got new coaching, so I don't anticipate the linebackers to quite have the kind of production that we've seen from EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin the last number of years. What that looks like now, I'm not entirely sure. I would still imagine 2 full-time linebackers, but I don't know what it was about the previous coaching regime allowing 2 linebackers to get 150 plus tackles a year. But I think this team's going to operate a little bit more efficiency, especially on the defensive line. So I don't think we see quite as much production slip through the cracks there. But nonetheless, I think there's still some upside there in the 24th round. Then Kevin Byard. Kevin Byard's a solid floor play defensive back. A guy who's going to get you 115 tackles a season. Set him, forget him. He's going to get in on pass breakups and everything. He's a staple of about every team that he's going to play on. So he's going to be in on tons of plays year in and year out until he retires. So I like him in Chicago. Then Jordan Love is my quarterback too, a guy who's got freaking first round picks and tons of talent to throw to. It's a nice tight end and Tucker Kraft that we talked about earlier, but as a quarterback, too, I just think that Jordan Love played on an injury last year. We saw some regression as a result, and we saw the team really lean on the run as well. So I think they drafted Matthew Golden to give him another weapon and trying to get back to more of a passing heavy approach this season. I imagine they will still operate through the run, but I think they bring up the passing numbers again this year with a healthy season from Jordan Love. Now you add another playmaker, and I think he could almost just throw the ball up and have a good athletic guy be able to go up and grab it. Not necessarily overly flashy guys, but he's definitely got numbers and guys who can produce. So I don't mind.
You just don't know who.
Yeah, right. I don't care who he throws to. If I'm getting Jordan Love, and I just know he's got lots of options. So as my quarterback too, I feel pretty good about getting him there. So that's going to round out my team. We've talked a little bit about everybody else's team, and we are an hour and a half in. So we will quickly grab any kind of parting thoughts, anything that stands out to you guys here before we jump out of it.
How do you see Siler's with Bradley Chubb coming back? Do you think?
If anything,
there's like 2 injuries back, right?
Yeah. Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb both went down last year. But the fact that Zach Sieler was able to put up the kind of numbers that he was, even with no help on the edge, I think he was putting up pretty incredible numbers with being the only defensive lineman. So having help, you would think that just points the arrow up. But at the same time, it's like, how much farther can he go as a defensive tackle with 10 sacks already, 70 tackles, or 60 to 70 tackles? How much higher can he go? But I mean, if he can, the incredible value where he's going in drafts and the upside is going to be there. So, I like the outlook. I think having an edge help really only helps the opportunity be there. Maybe he becomes more efficient, not necessarily sees an increase in production, but maybe those the snaps that he sees are more valuable. So maybe he will have to rely less on volume and more on just having help.
The stats the last 2 years are almost the same when it comes to tackles and sacks. So it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, I wouldn't know whether or not he would progress more or just a little more because there's more guys hitting that line. But But
I don't think it's going to take away from him. So I think that's something we can feel confident about. I think it
sure.
only helps him having help
No,
on that defense.
I draft him there too. It's a great pick.
Sure, I appreciate that. So yeah, let's see. Talked about a little bit about that Montez value. I think Dylan Sampson could be a kind of a steal pick where he went here. Where was it? Where did he go? Oh yeah, 19th round. Quinshon Judkins went down, or is going to be suspended to start the year. Jerome Ford's injured. I think Dylan Sampson could see quite a bit of work early, and maybe that turns into some more. Maybe that turns into a role later in the year. So just want to kind of touch on that.
Yeah, I think the
Johnny,
Judkins stuff hadn't hit yet, so I would imagine he gets drafted a little earlier than what we have him here. Just
right. Yeah. Good point. Good point. Good call. Johnny, anything stand out to you before we round out? Actually, quickly before you do that, I do want to talk about Jaylen Wright because I think he's going to get 10 to 15 touches. We could see him take over that Raheem Mostert role from a couple of years ago. I don't think that the Dolphins are going to want to lean heavily on Devon Achane. They're going to want to spell him a little bit. So I think, especially in the 26th round, Jaylen Wright could see 10 to 15 touches a game this year. So I'm big on him as kind of a cheap guy who could have a pretty significant role in this offense. But Johnny, sorry to interrupt you there after I called you
No, no
out.
problem.
If you got anything, any parting words or anything about the back half of this draft.
Yeah, I back up that Jaylen Wright pick. That's a great last round stab. I think he slept on. And who knows if Devin Achane is going to stay healthy. We know he's not going to carry the whole load. So year two, he left us with a bad taste in our mouth as a rookie, but year two, it might be a get right spot for Jaylen Wright. And I just want to touch on some IDP late round picks that I thought were great values here. Looking at rounds 20 through 26, so the last 6 rounds, I love that Byron Young pick, linebacker, but you can put him as defensive lineman. That's where I'd be putting him. Safe tackle floor. Love Tyrese Knight that late. Love Jaquan Brisker. Good pick there, Richard. Also love Demario Davis in the 22nd round by Ford Trouble. Good pick. Kobe Turner Axton, great pick that late. I think he should have been drafted much earlier. Your last two defensive backs, love them. Carly's Kevin Byard, still on the Kyle Duggar train, so good pick there, Richard. And also just a couple more. Zach Allen in the 21st round, great defensive lineman. I think he was top 5 in snaps last year. Anytime you're on the field that much, you have great opportunities, not only for tackles, but he gets the sacks too. So that Denver defensive line, we got some late round picks there. Cam Hayward was extremely productive last year. Maybe Pittsburgh's best defensive player you can make a case for last year. I know he's getting older, but still, it's 25th round. That was a great DL3, DL4, maybe for your bench. Somebody who can stream, gets a lot of tackles. Tackles were dependable last year. And then finally, Nick Amanwarrior as a last round pick for first MNO2 team, first MNO2. Julian Love, you can see, went in the 23rd round. His value is a little bit lower this year. Maybe you have to do something with Nick Amanwarrior. So if you're in a shallower defensive back league, maybe your 12-man league only start 2 defensive backs. Don't think Amanwarrior needs to be drafted there, but maybe temper expectations a little bit on Julian Love. Played more of that free safety role. Still like him. Maybe not getting 120 tackles, and maybe Amanwarrior picks up some of those tackles, but still think there's a lot of value to be had. Interested to see how it shakes out there in Seattle. But those were just some closing remarks on IDP players there.
Yeah. Then we touched a little bit earlier. You mentioned Demario Davis. I love that. That's an outstanding pick. He's the guy who's finishing up there with Levante David every year, and I drafted him 10 rounds earlier, so I love that pick. Fort Trouble did pretty good to round it out there. Then Tyrell Dodson, we touched on, Green Dot linebacker from Miami Dolphins. He should not be going in the 25th round. He should have been going 8 rounds earlier. So, and then also I even like the Devin Lloyd pick. Devin Lloyd's a guy who's put up some decent tackling floor. Now with the upward trend of this defense, I think Devin Lloyd is actually a pretty good value here in the 19th round as a solid LB2. Drafted as like an LB4 type, but with LB2 upside pretty easily. So
we'll see what kind of snaps. My only concern there is where the snap's going to be. They had that rookie that played well last year. I forget the name.
Ventrell Miller.
Ventrell Miller did well, and the snaps weren't there for our boy Lloyd. So I think Fourier is going to be full time. He's a great pick. But when it comes to Devin Lloyd, the upside's there. He's in a contract year. It's just have they moved on already? From him.
Yeah. I think Ventrell Miller was spelling Fourier when he went down. So we'll just kind of see if Ventrell Miller kind of put a stamp in the coaching staff's head enough to where he can supersede Devin Lloyd if they're unhappy with his production. Now kind of that Foyer is going to come back. We'll see how it's going to shake out. Looks like Devin Lloyd ought to get first crack, but he might have a short leash here if he wants to underproduce. Ventrell Miller might get an opportunity. So yeah, good call out for kind of a eyes on kind of guy for the waiver wire. Well, we want to thank you guys, as always, for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, congrats, and we appreciate you so much because it's been a long one, but this has been so much fun to kind of dive through. You're not going to see much content on offense and IDP combined drafts, so we feel happy to be able to kind of share this kind of content, our insights and our personal strategies with how we approach these kind of combined drafts. So if you find any value in this, let us know in the comments. If there's something else you want to see from us in the future, throw that down there as well. And we hope that you guys will continue to keep an eye on the YouTube channel. We've got a lot of stuff coming up this year, and hopefully you will consider subscription to the website. Go check out idpplus.com. We've got tons of tools and ADP, an ADP tracker now. We've got a team snap tool which really helps with IDP production, being able to predict how coaching staffs, how new coaching regimes are going to deploy IDP players is important, and being able to then see historical snap counts under them and apply them to the new team is big for IDP, and being able to see who's going to be on the field and get you that production. So go check out the website. We've got tons of rankings and everything. Hopefully you'll consider a subscription. We can reel you in. Like, comment, subscribe, set the notification bell so you get notified when all of our videos come out. And again, we just want to thank you all again for tuning in on our second half, volume 2 of the IDP Plus offense and IDP mock draft. And we'll see you next time on another episode of the IDP Plus podcast.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.